So, Craig, we go back many years, like more than 20 years back, and I was part of the church here at that time. But there was a vision for the church when it started, like even years before I joined. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, Shani, it's great to have you here. And I mean, the reason how you got to be with us was because we've always had a heart to serve in schools. And so I walked into Allen Glen High School one day and I said to the headmaster, is there any way I can serve you? What can I do? And he invited me to do a whole range of things. But one of those was to work with a bunch of young leaders in the school and work with them and encourage them and be alongside them. And that's where we got to connect with yourself and a number of other young people that have continued to make impacts all over the world. So that's the fundamental heart of our church. We believe God has called us to be moms and dads, to encourage the next generation of leaders, and to do everything we can to see young people succeed in what they're called to succeed in. So it's been a long journey, and it's an exciting journey, because from that 20 years ago, I mean, you're literally touching children and people all over the world, and we're excited that we had some part of that.
So, like, coming back here has been so exciting for me, because I've seen so many things that are different now to when I was here before we left to go to Australia. And one of the things is that this has become a real resource hub, and I know that that was a real dream for you. So can you tell me a little bit more about the things that are running out of this space now, and some of the things you do as a church into the community?
Look, and I think what we really believe is that God blesses you so that you can be a blessing. Yeah. So you're part of us purchasing this property. As a youth group, you guys used to meet in the small hall next door. And so, you know, you've been part of that from the start.
Yeah.
When we bought this, it's 5 hectares of land, and it was never meant to be for us. We're not trying to build a church, a brand, a denomination.
Yeah.
We're trying to serve the community. And so in that, we've always said to our community, how can we serve you? What can we do? And so there's a range of things that happen. So when you come in here now, many of the things are things that you and the other young people with us then would have spoken about, dreamed about. There's the school, and we'll talk a bit more in detail about that later.
Yeah.
But when you come in here, you'll see a group of young people working. And it's a social employment fund with an organization called CDR. They're based here. They work with 200 people that were previously didn't have access to work, having access to a couple of days of work a week to get skills developed and get encouraged. And so there's different people mentoring and discipling, working with people amongst this 200 young people. We have a resource center that gets used this afternoon. Sadly, we have a memorial service. So there's various things that happen here. There's a homework center that takes place in the afternoon, an aftercare center. My Voice, which is a group of young people doing social advocacy in schools. They use offices here. And then we have Bethany House, who have an office here. And Bethany House provide all the statutory social work for this region. Just the Muldersdrift region, there's offices in Krugersdorp and Randfontein, but for Muldersdrift, they have offices here, so it's a social work center. When you drive in, there's gardens on either side. That's Farming God's Way. So we have a Farming God's Way center here where people get trained in organic farming, and the whole goal is to make communities self-sustainable from a food security perspective.
Wow.
And it's all natural farming, zero tillage, zero fertilizer. So very organic, very exciting.
Yeah.
And then there's another organization here called CDR Equipping that a number of us are part of. And CDR Equipping is involved in empowering, equipping young people in a variety of ways. But one of the most exciting projects is the My Walk project. So many children in South Africa and in Africa, we were able to send 55 pairs of shoes to Zambia last week.
Oh wow.
And that's shoes that have been sponsored by people in the community. So this is the My Walk project shoebox, and it's basically school shoes made out of waste products from the hospital. So it's all the plastics products from the hospitals made into the most excellent shoes. What the young people tell me about is these shoes right now They used to take their old leather shoes and like put wax on them to make them look like these shoes.
To make them shiny.
To make them shiny like these shoes. And so our goal is that every child in this community can walk to school with a great pair of shoes. And I mean, we buy these shoes for 50 Rand. I mean, so in Australian dollars, it's
like $4.50.
$4.
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like
so that's really good. So those are the kinds of projects here. There's a coffee shop that runs here, and I think I've covered everything.
Can I take a pair of these
Yeah,
out?
yeah. Those are a bit small for you, but we can get you a bigger pair. So my daughter, who teaches as well, has taken a pair. She wears them to school. So
she wears them?
She wears them, yeah, just as a teacher, just
Yeah.
to make a point to the kids and,
Those are cool.
and get kids to sponsor it in the school she's in. So,
Wow. So I remember when we used to run our holiday clubs here in the middle of winter, and we would have kids arriving without shoes on their feet.
yeah.
So it's a real need in
Yeah,
the
it is.
community.
And I mean, the holiday club program runs that you guys have started years ago.
Yeah.
So we've had thousands of young people through the holiday club programs. You know, so there's young people all over through the holiday club
Well, I
programs.
met someone the other day that was working in the offices or in the school.
She was a teacher. She's a teacher in
She's
school.
a teacher
Anna.
in the school now, and she was part of one of the last holiday clubs that I ran here as a child.
2010.
Yes, so like 13 years ago, and now she's teaching.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting.
And she comes through a whole teaching program called More Than a Teacher that we're connected with.
Okay.
And so we've also formed a very strategic partnership with the King's Education Group. So that's quite exciting.
And that's how the school came about, right?
Yeah. So that's how we partnered with the King's Education Group and built the King's School Multistrift.
Okay. So obviously I actually just want to know a bit more about the idea for the school. Where did that come from?
So when we bought this land, we said this land is so big, there's got to be a school on this land.
Okay.
So
and that was like 25 years, 30 years ago?
About 2000. 1999, 2000 we bought the property. So we bought this property then, and when we bought it, we've got clips of Andrew and myself and the leadership team saying there's a school coming here, there'll be children here. But prophetic word that God spoke about this place, he said this place is the Father's house. So at Community Ministries we have a passion for fathers and mothers to raise up sons and daughters. And sons and fathers and mothers have got to take responsibility for the education of their sons and daughters. So the word of the Lord for this place from a Zambian friend of mine was, this is the Father's house.
Yeah.
When we bought the property, the first thing we did for Holiday Club, we built a field. So when you drove in today, you saw the 80-odd children from the school playing on that field. That field was built. Before we did anything else, we built a field where children could play.
Yeah.
And so that field was there for Holiday Club and for children.
Yeah.
And so that's the total passion. And I mean, that Holiday Club, when the field first went up, we had 1,500 children come to Holiday Club.
Yeah.
You guys were in tears most days.
Yes, for many reasons. Yeah.
So.
The next thing I want to talk about is the school.
Yeah.
And how you can tell me a bit how that connects with the King's School Group, and what the vision is for the school as well.
So the King's Education Group is set up to plant schools throughout South Africa. So it started, the King's School, West Rand started with one school in Portview where you taught.
Yes.
And so that school still exists, and that's the first school. And then with Ken and myself, we've been working for years together to how do we plant schools. I believe some of the most under-resourced facilities in the nation are church buildings, because they're empty all week and get used on the weekends.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get churches to think how can we use our buildings for educational purposes.
Yeah.
Some for early childhood development, some for primary, some for high. But I can't say to other churches do it and we haven't done it.
Yeah.
So 3 years ago, at the start of lockdown, the King's School Multistrift started in what was the hall where you guys had youth.
Yeah.
So the King's School Multistrift started there, and from that we've got community trusts that have donated funds in, and the King's Education Group have put resources in, And what we've done as a church is we've given 4 hectares of land for the school to be built on. So it's a total partnership. You see, we believe that God has called us to expand the kingdom. And by planting a school, you're expanding the kingdom. By speaking God's word over children's lives every day, you're extending the kingdom. So we don't ask people, are you a member of this church, therefore can you come to the school? We say to our entire community, this is the best school for you to come to, bring your children.
Yeah.
And we serve them because God's called us to serve this whole community as a church. So that's the school, and the partnership with the King's Education Group is we want our children to get access to the highest standard of education possible. And so that happens extensively, and our children have access from this community to that school. But that's all the educational processes are managed by the King's Education Group. There's an executive principal there, Ken Langley, who you used to work for, Ken.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those teachers, and there's a lot of partnerships and development. And then we're also part of the Association of Christian Schools International. And so Sean and Kathy Moore serve the school here in terms of their input into it. So there's lots of oversight, there's lots of support, there's lots of encouragement. And then as a local church, we simply come alongside and do everything we can to carry parents and families through it.
Yeah. Oh, that's very exciting. So when you said the school started 3 years ago?
At the start of lockdown.
Okay, so 2020?
2020, and we started with, I think, 20 children and went down to 5.
Okay.
So it wasn't a flourishing start.
And so it's been 3 years, so where are you up to now?
So now the classes go from grade RR to grade 7.
Okay.
And there are 89 children as of now,
Okay.
with about another 5 or 6 applications. So I think by the time school kicks into full steam next week, we'll probably be between 95 and 100 children.
Okay.
Which is phenomenal growth. And with no advertising, it's really word of mouth.
Yeah.
And one parent tells another parent tells another parent. And there's 8 classrooms there now that we're utilizing. And we've built 10 there in total. 2 are used for staff and administration.
Okay.
So that's phase 1.
All right.
And
that's only just, I mean, they were still finishing off the building when I was here 2 days ago.
So. And they are. So the children are using the fields a lot and the other facilities. And by next week, it'll move forward.
Be completely finished. Okay.
But there's a massive need in South Africa for high quality education.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as I said, our goal is to encourage churches. So there's 2 other churches right now that are talking to us, one in the Cape and one nearby here, as to how they use their church buildings for a school.
Oh, exciting.
So we're using everything we're learning here to try and plant there.
Yes.
You know?
So really modelling things for the community as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the school and how that functions, so you said you're up to about 90 students at the moment. So how many per class, and how many classes? Obviously like 1 class per grade kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's more or less 1 per grade. Some of the classes are smaller. So in the higher grades they're a little bit smaller.
Okay.
And grade RR is a little bit smaller. And I think grade R, at the moment around about 15 children per class.
Okay.
So that's
a fair number.
That's the size classes that they are. You know?
Okay. And then what's the goal? What's the dream?
So the goal is
like 10 years time.
So the goal will be to build another set of classrooms on the other side, so to duplicate it, and then there's enough space for a big field in between for sport, and at the back of that, the next goal will be to build a high school. While that's all happening, there's a big gap in South Africa for further education and training and just access to training. So where the school has been, in the old hall where you guys used to meet, we wanted to turn that into an adult education centre.
Oh, wow.
So there's a program called Work for a Living, which basically does basic life skills for people to be effective in being employed. We've sent 2 young people on the Work for a Living program. They've gone, and both have been highly successful in their careers.
Oh, wow.
And they're progressing. They've made a lot of progress. So the course is very effective. And then there's other skills that go with it. So you'll do the Work for a Living introductory course, and then barista training. So one of the things we've really love around here is coffee. So then young people do barista training, or they'll do. So we're looking at other trainings that would come alongside work for a living. So how do we turn this centre into an adult education centre? So that's very much what we want to do as the next phase of where it goes. Before we build a high school up there, there's a massive gap of skills training.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Because also, you want to meet that need as well in the community for people who are not educated and didn't have the opportunity to go to school.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And then across this valley, we've got partnerships with multiple organisations. So there's housing projects, there's other training projects, there's various projects. So we don't see ourselves as a church as the solution. Yeah. We see ourselves as part of the solution, as part of God's kingdom, and every part will play their part in extending God's kingdom. And so we established what we call the Kingdom Valley, which is basically people saying we have a heart to serve the King and we have the heart to serve our communities. How do we partner together? And the real question is, this is where it gets tough. Whatever I've got, I'm prepared to give you, so that God could use you to extend the kingdom further. Yeah. Not a lot of people think like that. Yeah. They think, whatever I've got, how can I make ourselves more prominent by doing that? I know we don't like to say we do that, but I think we do that. It's kind of a natural, selfish, human tendency, whereas God wants us to go the opposite way. He wants us to give everything for the purposes of His kingdom. Yeah. So that's what we're excited about.
Just one more thing in terms of going back to the school. So the curriculum and that you're running off of, because you've spoken now about excellence in education. So I don't know if you can touch on maybe the motto or like value or vision of the actual school and the curriculum and stuff that they use.
So what I can touch on is how it functions. So my role is a visionary encourager of this school being planted and many others. Yeah. The educational and those questions are answered by the executive principal. No, well, first of all, Ken, the executive principal, and he's got a team of academics that work with him, and they manage all of that. Yeah. So all of it aligns with what our government requires, and they do caps and they fulfill all the criteria there, and so it develops like that. But with this school being smaller and this classes being smaller, you'll find a lot of different types. And so they would have an Australia week, for example, where they would just focus on Australia, learn everything they can about Australia. And strangely for South Africans, all we know about Australia is you got kangaroos. That's about it. Yeah. And that occasionally you beat us at cricket. That's all we know. But there's a whole lot more about Australia. So there's a lot of flexibility. They do a lot of dynamic things in the school. But the whole so in the partnership, my role is clear. It's the vision, the picture. How do we bring resources in to encourage that? Educationally, Ken would run with that with all his principals, and the principals all meet together, and you'll find a different flavour at each King school based on that community. But the other exciting thing is we want kids that don't have resources necessarily to have access here. So through CDR Equipping, we run scholarships and bursary funds. So what people do is they would give funding into CDR Equipping. Parents contribute something. So everybody has to contribute.
Okay. And is that according to what they're earning?
Yes, according to means. So everybody has to contribute, but there are some people then apply for a bursary or scholarship, and they get access to that. And so that's managed on a year-to-year basis. But that's so we don't want any child to be excluded for those reasons.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool. Thank you, Craig. I think that's everything from my side. Just trust
that as I know you left your children to go and learn. I hope they learned some things in the classes there today, and that would be great. And I think in terms of things, we appreciate the vision and the heart of people right around the world that have supported us in what we're doing. So you and Nick have been part of what we're doing, even from Australia. So we appreciate that. We appreciate you checking in on us. One of the teachers there, Marlene, said, please, Craig, please give me Chantelle's number. I really enjoyed meeting her. I'd love to talk to her some more. So,
really connected well with her.
So you've got a few friends you've made now, yeah. So hopefully you can introduce them to some of your friends.
Yeah.
One of my visions would be for some of our teachers, like an Anna and her husband Josh. He does air conditioning, so if anybody there needs people to do air conditioning stuff in Australia, because it's hot there, you need air conditioning more than anywhere else that I know. But so that's what he does. But if she went across and did a month or two working in one of your classes, and one of your young teachers came across and did a month or two working in her class,
yeah.
I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, like a bit of an exchange.
Exchange, and even when they come, when she goes, she stays with that teacher and their family, and when that teacher comes, they stay with her and her family.
Yeah.
So it's a genuine experience of being
Yeah.
in the. So I think if we could dream something like that together,
Yeah.
that would be incredible.
Really exciting. I think one of the incredible things for me is coming and seeing the physical building of a school here, and that was my dream 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When I sat and spoke to you and said, I really feel like we need to have a school here
Yeah.
on the property. How do we do that?
I mean those.
And now it's there.
And you were working in that office there. And we were going to that office where you and I used to work.
Yeah.
There's like 10 young people that fill that office.
I know, doing something completely different, but right into the community
Yeah.
again. So
it's exciting.
really exciting.
So,
And yeah, thank you so much for
thanks,
your
Chantel.
time.
Bless you and Nick and your family.
Yeah,
man.
bless you guys.
Thanks for being here.